Anyway, open up your marketing plan. Can you draw a straight line from the business result you're trying to achieve all the way down through your objectives, your programs, your tactics, and your activities? And are they all connected? And if things are not on that line, you have things that are off the line, we call those orphans or random acts. And that's what steals your strategic capacity.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Scale Smart, Grow Fast podcast. Now, growth without direction often leads to wasted time, budget, and opportunity. In this episode, Laura Patterson, president of Vision Edge Marketing and creator of the Circle of Traction framework, shares how leaders can align their strategies around customer value, streamline execution, and make smarter decisions using data. With over 2 decades of experience guiding hundreds of organizations, Laura is going to deliver a clear and actionable approach to turning marketing into a measurable growth engine. Laura, how are you? Thanks for being on the podcast.
Harley, thank you for having me. Appreciate the opportunity to share my passion with your community.
Laura, tell us a bit more about what brought you to being president of Vision Edge.
Okay, well, I won't spend too much time there because I'd like to make sure we spend more time on things that will be helpful and actionable for your community. If you wind the clock back just a little bit, I'm in Austin, Texas. And in 1999, if you could spell marketing, you could get a job. And having been in Austin since 1982, coming here after working for several companies, predominantly in very early stage technology, because you have to think about 1980, your community, a sense of that. The product I was marketing, selling, and servicing ran on a Wang 2200. So that'll give them a little sense of the kind of technology. And I was brought here by Motorola, that might be a name some of your community know, to help bring up a new organization, a new business line. And that was also involving marketing, operations, communication, all the things to do customer acquisition. And I spent the next 14 years inside Motorola and then left to go back into software. And when my phone rang, many times of people wanting to have me help them with strategic and product marketing and customer acquisition and retention. It was an opportunity to jump from the frying pan to the fire and start my own firm. So hence the impetus and catalyst for Vision Edge Marketing, and we've been at it ever since.
Love it. Now, tell us more about the Circle of Traction framework. How did that come about and what is it for?
Okay, thank you. So the Circle of Traction has been around since the very beginning of our company, and many of our customers have used what we call the wheel to help them make sure that they have the right starting point and end point and all the things that you need in order to move the wheel and get traction in your marketplace. And we have a book on it called Fast Track Your Business, which is a result actually of a longtime customer who, as he moved through various companies, would bring us in to talk about how to leverage the Circle of Traction and get his group all on board. And on my way out one day from one of those meetings, John said, "When are you going to put this in a book?" And I said, "Probably not, John. I've done 3 books and, they're a labor of love." And he said, "Well, maybe you'll rethink that." And so now, just so everybody knows, it's really true, real. We actually did write a book. It's very actionable and provides guidance at each step of the way so that anyone who is trying to increase and accelerate their market growth with a customer-centric approach has a framework to do so.
Now, you've worked with a ton of companies. What would you say is the most common reason marketing becomes disconnected from actual business growth?
I love this question, Harley. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to give your listeners and community a chance to take a little test. All right, so open up your marketing plan while you're listening to us talk. And your marketing plan, odds are it's in Excel or PowerPoint. Some people think that if they have a marketing plan with the list of things they're going to do, when they're going to do them, and a budget, which is often in Excel, they have a plan. We'd like to encourage them to think otherwise. But let's say they open up their PowerPoint or their Excel. Here's your test. Anyway, open up your marketing, your plan. And you can do this for any plan, your sales plan, your strategic plan, any plan. And tell me, can you draw a straight line from the business result you're trying to achieve all the way down through your objectives, your programs, your tactics, and your activities? And are they all connected? And if things are not on that line, you have things that are off the line, we call those orphans or random acts. And that's what steals your strategic capacity. Now, the other challenge you have is that every day new things present themselves and you might actually to think, I may want to do that. And my question to you would be, where does it fit on the line? Because if it's not on the line, then you have another random act that you're spending money, time, energy on that may or may not move, as we say here in Texas, the ball down the field. And so that's a very simple test, very practical test, and we can help you fix that.
Yeah, so these random acts of marketing, that can be like the new shiny object, this new technology, new pipeline. What are some strategies that you suggest to people to really stay focused and avoid kind of going after that shiny object syndrome?
Well, in marketing, I'll start with marketing first. But this, again, are the same questions that we would ask people in sales or customer success. The first question anyone should be asking themselves anytime they're thinking about doing something that is not on the line, so to speak, is what business outcome will this activity or tactic help you achieve? That's the first question. Because if you don't know which business outcome it's tied to, it's probably time to have a conversation about that. Secondly, what is it you expect me to do specifically or our team to do specifically to help achieve that outcome? And how do you see this action, this effort doing that? And lastly, how will you know that it worked? Because measurability, accountability is extremely important. And there's a lot of things that people in marketing, unlike people in sales, can measure. Sales is very specific. Number of appointments, number of conversations, number of contracts, number of closed deals, right? They have, size of the deal, rate of the, close rate, conversion rate. Those are kind of some basic things. But in marketing, we have managed to make things very complicated with a lot of measures, all the way mostly down in the activity realm. How many people came to our website, and how many people looked at a post, and how many people downloaded a document, how many people shared something on one of our social media platforms, and on and on and on, right? And what we really need to be clear about isn't how we're going to measure the activity, but rather how we're going to measure whether or not we've had impact on the outcome.
So many times, speaking of the outcome, many leaders rely on experience and instinct to make decisions. When does that instinct fall short, and how does the data fill in the gaps?
Okay, that's a really good question, because I never want to tell someone who's running a business, particularly been in an industry a very long time, that their experience and intuition and gut are irrelevant, because that's not true. I mean, I've been at the helm of Vision Edge Marketing for 26 years, and I don't want to lie. I also count on my experience, gut, and intuition. But I am a strong believer that we can make more confident, faster decisions if we have data to support what we're thinking. And it's very easy to keep doing what we've always been doing and not know whether it is or isn't working if we don't have data. So most of us every day make about 3,500 decisions just in our lives. That's a lot of decisions. And so if we can streamline that by using data, that makes our lives easier. And the amount of data that most of us have access to is overwhelming. So really, for most of us, data is not our biggest challenge. Our biggest challenge is getting the actionable insight from that data, understanding whether a pattern is relevant or not, whether we have a trend or a one-off, right? All of those things. So that is a very critical part of being able to be a good leader, is being able to ask good questions. And so because data is overwhelming and insights are overwhelming, I say to people, the best way to leverage your data is to know what question you're trying to answer. So start there, because if you just dig into all the data, you'll just be in quicksand. Okay.
Yeah.
We all will be in quicksand. So Harley, my recommendation is to people then in our communities, what questions do you need the answer to that data can help you get the answer for?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I know, especially with marketing data, it can really be overwhelming. And especially for an executive or leader who maybe their background's not in marketing, trying to decipher what metrics they're looking at, what they want to measure, just it might be easier to throw it all away. So it's good to share that tip. Now, in a busy organization, how do you help leaders decide which data points actually matter for growth versus which ones are just the noise?
Well, there is a lot of noise. I agree with that. And it comes back to really understanding, what does success look like for your company in whatever the time horizon is. And when I am working with leaders, the first thing they want to talk about is revenue, right? We want this much revenue by X period of time. Maybe they mix in some profit or margin, depending on what that looks like for them. And my comment to them is, well, marketers don't market to buckets of revenue. And so we really need to break that into outcomes, real outcomes. So how many new customers do you want to acquire in what markets for what products? Or how many existing customers do you want to retain in which markets? Or how many of your tier one customers do you want to see an increase in the share of wallet and what additional products or things like that, right? It could be any number of outcomes like that, but very specific. And I recommend as customer centric as you can make them, because if they're customer centric, that will really help both your sales and your marketing and your customers success teams be more successful because they'll understand what you're trying to achieve as an organization. When you craft outcomes in those terms, the metrics kind of evolve, right? They kind of are revealed to you. And then you can say, okay, now we know what measures or metrics are going to use. For example, maybe it's product adoption rate. Maybe it's share of wallet. Maybe it's footprint expansion. When you want to get additional expansion inside a customer organization, as opposed to a specific account in that organization buying more, which would be share of wallet. Now we know those kinds of measures. Now we can look at the individual operational plans, whether that's a sales or a marketing or a product or whatever group that you might have planned. And now we can look for the ways that we can have measures for each of those groups in terms of what they're going to do to contribute to that overall measure.
I love that you're saying really customer centric and customer focused. How does the circle of traction framework help companies stay aligned with, having that customer centric focus?
Well, it all starts with the very first node, which is customer insights. Who are your customers? What's important to them? What pains and challenges are they trying to address? What aspirations are they trying to achieve? How are they going about doing it today? How can you give them a way to do it better? These are the kinds of questions. How are you different and better from the competition? So it's all starting with those kinds of questions and answers to them so that you can then create and understand the customer buying journey, the personas, and now build out a strategic plan or a strategy. And then, okay, now that we know that, now we can figure out, okay, how we're going to execute those.
So speaking of execution, as marketing grows, you have that strategy. It can get kind of messy sometimes with all the different options of what to execute. When does it make sense to delegate some of the activities, whether it's like reporting, research, task management, to someone like an executive assistant so that the leadership team can focus on higher level insights and execution?
That's a really good question. And I know this is an area where Workgenics can add a lot of value to your customers. So here's how I would first start. Do you have all your processes well documented? Because if you want to have others do something for you, and I'm all for others doing something for me. Remember, I'm living in the South. We take help when we can get it. Then the best way they can help you is if they know what the processes are. So anytime you're going to delegate, whether it's internally or externally, the better documented your processes are, the more likely they can really help you. So it all starts there. All businesses run on processes. Every part of our business runs on processes. And marketing has lots and lots and lots of processes. And so, for example, putting together an email campaign or writing a blog post or creating a podcast or a video or building out a virtual or physical event or creating a webinar, whatever those things might be, they all have a process. And the more that you have clarity around the steps in that process and how long each step needs to take and who needs to be involved, the more likely someone like a virtual assistant or an executive assistant or a third party that you might be hiring can help you complete that work.
Every day, your top performers are buried under emails, scheduling, and reporting. Work that doesn't move the needle. The result? Frustration, burnout, and worst of all, lost revenue. That's why we created the Executive's Guide to Scaling High Performers, a simple, battle-tested framework to eliminate busy work and unlock your team's full potential. Inside, you'll get the exact steps top executives use to retain A players, boost productivity, and free up their team for high-impact work. Stop losing revenue. Go to workergenics.com/growthhub or check the episode notes to download the Executive's Guide to Scaling High Performers now. We talked about the customer-centric focus and aligning things. We talked about aligning them in the marketing. How do you keep that alignment through to the sales side of things from the marketing with that customer-centric focus?
Okay, really good question, Harley. And if we don't give salespeople guidance and direction, they'll do it they'll do whatever they have to do to make the number. Having been in sales throughout my career and technically still in sales today, right? If we don't say, this is the customer segment that we need to increase our position in. So we want you to be thinking about customers in this segment, or these are the customers where we want to see an increase in the amount of business that we're doing with them. The more we can give them the focus on which customers and why and what, the better they can do their job. Otherwise, they're just putting feet on the street, pounding the pavement. I mean, I've been there. And one of my jobs early in my career was in office supplies, selling office supplies. In the old days, before we had, big box like Office Depot and Staples and whatnot, we actually had mom and pops, and people would go to work and knock on doors and sell office supplies and, into businesses. If we don't know which businesses we want to spend our time on, then we'll just knock on every door, right? And so our goal by being customer centric is to make the work of a salesperson more efficient and effective, because they now know whose door to knock on and what it is they should say when they knock on that door.
Making sure everyone has the same focus and having that same ideal client that they're going after can really be a game changer. Now, speaking of game changers, we want to talk a little bit about performance and scaling here for a minute. You're known for helping people turn their marketing into performance engines. What's the first steps to making the marketing measurable and accountable so that it can start becoming that performance engine?
It starts with being tied to really clear outcomes. I am always surprised when I am working with a marketing team and I will ask them, what are the 3 to 5 business outcomes for your organization that you are expected to impact and create value for? And if they don't know the answer to that, they should stop. Not all marketing organizations do this, but I've seen this happen a lot, is they open up last year's plan and they make a copy and then they update that plan to this year. They might add in some events, change some dates around, modify some numbers for the budget, and voila, they have a plan. That is not a plan, right? That is a list and it is a budget. But if you don't know, the outcomes might have changed, for whatever reason. Maybe there is a key region that's more important right now, or due to a particular trend. I mean, look at what's going on in the economy today. So maybe you wouldn't be going after certain manufacturing companies, but you might spend more time going after some other industry that is not in the throes of trying to figure out what their supply chain is going to be and where they're going to be doing business and how they're going to upskill or bring on new people and staffing, right? Because that's where their head's at right now. Their head might not be somewhere. On the other hand, if you sell into people who need to bring up factories or help bring on people, that might be an awesome market based on the trend. And you may say, hey, we're going to shift our focus from segment X to manufacturing because we are bringing real value there and we can solve this pain point. So what manufacturing companies, what kind of manufacturing companies, where would they be? And now that would be giving me a whole different way to look at my marketing plan and my sales. And I would also probably have some impact on maybe product, which ones we might be wanting to focus on or which ones we might want to be enhancing. And it probably has some impact on customer service and any number of parts of our company. Is that a good example, you think?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Follow-up question to that I would have is knowing how there can sometimes be segmentation in responsibilities and decision-making authority between like executive leadership and marketing leadership teams. How do you kind of resolve that challenge of whose responsibility is it to look at those high-level trends and adjust the marketing plan appropriately? Does that need to come from the executive level, or is that like the marketing side, or does it depend on the organization? How do you help people resolve that?
I think it has a lot to do with the talent in the organization, the size of the organization. So if you're a relatively small to mid-sized company and your marketing person is essentially a tactical person that executes or implements, elements of a plan, maybe even is mostly sales support, they're probably not going to have the skill set do what you answer that question. So that's probably coming from the leadership team, or maybe the leadership team has brought someone like our firm or another firm like ours into the mix to help with that. But if you have a more seasoned leader in marketing, then they may be able to play that role. People are putting in chief growth officers or chief strategy officers into roles that now marketing is reporting into, chief commercial officers. So it could be those people as well. I think a lot just depends on how you're going to organize your company, the size of your company, and the capabilities of the people on your team.
So one thing you brought up made me think about this, the changes in the market, the tariffs and things like that. How often do you recommend people examine their marketing plan and shift strategies if necessary? Is it just, hey, we made this at the beginning of the year, we did all the good things at the beginning of the year, so we're just going to stick with it, or recommend they revisit it throughout the year and make adjustments?
I do recommend frequent visits in periods of time where there's a lot of flux. We're in a lot of flux right now and have been. So I would recommend more frequently. And I highly recommend monthly operations reviews or some other formal process of reviewing here's what we said we were going to accomplish. Here's how we've done it. Some kind of a dashboard that is giving insight into what has worked, what isn't working, and make course adjustments accordingly. Within the understanding that some things may take longer to see whether they're going to play out versus something that takes shorter, but have clarity around, look, we're expecting X to occur. For example, let's say you're bringing a new product or service to market and you have a launch plan. And you're going to launch it. Let's say you're going to launch it to a specific set of customers. And maybe you did some proof of concept and you had customers involved in part of the development. Maybe you have a customer advisory board. So you haven't done this like in a vacuum. And you have some general idea. You've done all your positioning and messaging work. You've done some testing of that with your customer advisory board or some of your friendlies in your customer base. So you kind of have a pretty good idea. Again, you're not just winging it. You've done your homework. And you have a plan for how you're going to bring that to market. And you have a strategy, right? And you're going to start with your existing customers that you think will have the highest likelihood to purchase, which is a very common plan, right? It's easier to sell to people who already know you, trust you, like you, than it is to people who you don't know you yet, so therefore may not know whether they like you or trust you. And you put that plan in place and you say, we want X number of our existing customers to adopt this product within X period of time of the launch. And we want X percentage of people to maybe do a demo or have an appointment or do an inquiry or download a document or whatever it is that you have as maybe a couple of interim steps. And you have that mapped out and you have real numbers. And now you have that playing out for 90 plus days or 180 days, whatever the time frame you think. You're 1 month in and you're not seeing the numbers you need. Maybe you're 2 months in, you're 3 months in. Might be time to say, hey, that is not working. We're not getting to where we need to go. What do we need to do? On the other hand, you might say we are seeing some things working. We're seeing those interim behaviors getting traction, but we're not seeing the conversion rate that we expected. That might mean we were unrealistic about our conversion rate and we need more time. So that's why data can be so helpful. And that's why setting performance targets is essential. So performance target setting, really, really critical part of any part of the company, but especially for marketing, because we spend money and we want to know whether or not what we're doing is having.
Absolutely. Now, one thing you mentioned several times there was like getting information from the customer or the client. In your view, what's the biggest missed opportunity on how companies gather or act on customer feedback?
One of the biggest misses is they don't have customer advisory or technical advisory boards. Having people serve in a role where they get an opportunity to give you feedback and you give obviously it's a give and take, right? People don't serve on your advisory board without something in return. It might be first usage of a new product. It might be a better pricing on a product. It could be any number of things that they might get as a value in exchange for being on your board, but it is a missed opportunity for many, many companies. We help a lot of customers set up customer advisory boards or technical advisory boards for companies and just quickly the difference between them. A technical advisory board for very technical companies, those are the people that are in technical roles inside your customer base. They may be the primary user. It could be an engineer or some other, technical capability. And you really want to get into the functionality and features of the product or how something is going to work. Odds are that someone in a more management role inside your customer base may be far removed from those day-to-day kinds of capabilities. So you want a technical board of customers as well. But a general customer advisory board, these could be members of the leadership team, and they might be giving you insight on what's going on in their business. This is your opportunity to find out what their pain points are, your opportunity to find out what they need to do in order to be successful. Remember, we cannot have business value if we don't create customer value, right? So customer advisory boards help us understand what customers value. And that's really critical to the success of any company and long-term growth.
I love it. Now, as we wrap up, speaking to a leader out there who's listening and they're feeling kind of stuck in this like reactive marketing mode, Besides getting in touch with you, what's one action they can take this week to shift toward a more strategic, data-driven approach?
Well, I think the very first thing to do is take a look at their plan. And if they don't have one, probably need to create one. I just had this conversation with someone this week. So the reason I'm laughing, and maybe you're smiling, is they're getting ready to bring a product to market within 6 to 8 weeks. And they think they've done all their homework. And I said, well, what's your plan? And they started talking about, I said, well, have you written it down? No, not written down. I said, you don't get any points for a plan that's not written down. First start that with that question and do the test. Do the test and start looking at it. And then thirdly, start asking questions that you need the answers to so that you can really look at your data in a different way. And every question should be a question that has the word customer in it. Like, which of our customers are buying from us? How long of our customers are typically a customer? How many of our customers have left us in the last year? Whatever it is, but your question should have the word customer in it, and that will be a good starting point.
I appreciate you leaving us with more questions to ask. If people want to continue the conversation with you, what's the best way for them to connect?
Well, they can certainly reach out to me on LinkedIn, or they email me at laurap@visionedgemarketing.com. I hope that they'll think about picking up Fast Track Your Business from Amazon, because I think that's often a great way to get some practical advice without spending a whole lot of money. And we have a couple of free items on our website that they're welcome to download, including a customer centricity worksheet that'll help them kind of get themselves maybe a little more customer centric oriented.
We'll make sure to have all those links in the show notes so everyone can check those out. Thank you so much, Laura. Now, to those of you listening, if you got value from this episode, do one quick thing. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss future strategies to help you scale smarter. And maybe you know a business owner or colleague who could use this information. Share the episode with them. It could be exactly what they need right now. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, leave us a quick rating. It helps us reach more leaders like you. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you all on the next one.